Hello everyone, in this video we're going to explore the fascinating regional differences and censorship across the Metal Gear series, with some unused content sprinkled in for good measure. Much of this information comes from my own research alongside the brilliant team at the Cutting Room Floor, a community dedicated to video game preservation and archaeology. They essentially catalogue unused and cut content like debug menus, beta graphics and unused audio discovered through meticulous code analysis. These preservationists dig deep into nearly every game you can imagine, so I really highly encourage you guys to go check them out and show some support. But anyway, I want to be upfront with you, not every regional difference or piece of content will be shown directly in this video.
Konami.
Finding reliable emulators for some of these obscure versions without risking malware simply isn't worth it. So I will be relying on documented research and available footage when possible. If you appreciate this kind of deep dive into gaming history, please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. The Japanese version of Metal Gear contains significantly more dialogue than its English counterpart, due to the game's limited 128KB ROM size and the need to expedite localization. 69 of the original 155 messages were either cut or shortened for the Western release. The removed content primarily consisted of item pickup descriptions and elevator usage instructions. This omitted dialogue was later restored in the Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence ports for PlayStation 2, which featured a couple of retranslations of the game. This revised localization has been preserved in all subsequent releases thereon, including the HD edition for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and PlayStation Vita, and the Master Collection for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, Xbox One and so on, as well as the GOG release for Windows. And notably, the NES version also retained and translated most of these messages despite being a separate port. In the Japanese version, whenever the player picks up a new item, a dialogue box appears where Snake mentions the item he's just picked up. In the English version, Snake just picks up an item without making any comments. In the Japanese version as well, players could contact Big Boss for commentary on nearly every item found throughout the game, with a few exceptions, notably late game equipment such as the oxygen tank and compass. Big Boss would provide context-specific dialogue when called from a room containing an item. While many of these descriptions offered straightforward advice that players could reasonably deduce independently, such as explaining that remote-controlled missiles are in fact missiles controlled remotely, certain items receive more colourful commentary in the original. The cardboard box description, for instance, was written in a notably humorous tone, adding personality to what otherwise would be purely functional guidance. These item commentaries were among the dialogue cut from the English release due to ROM limitations. Two of Big Boss's early messages on the third floor of building number 1 were significantly truncated in the English localization. These shortened versions omitted all references to Schneider, the resistance leader who provides critical intelligence regarding the fortress's layout and item locations. As Schneider is not mentioned by any other character in the English version, players unfamiliar with the Japanese release could progress through the first half of the game completely unaware of his existence or how to contact him. Only in the later portion of the game does Schneider begin initiating contact with the player through incoming transmissions. In the Japanese version as well, a character named Steve substitutes for Diane during certain boss encounters when she's unavailable. Over the course of these 3 exchanges, Steve's demeanour shifts from helpful to noticeably irritated with Snake. The game provides no explanation for Steve's relationship to Diane, though the Metal Gear Solid 4 database later clarified that Steve is Diane's brother, contextualizing his protective attitude towards her involvement with Snake's mission. Notably, Steve's dialogue appears at the very end of the game's code, indicating these exchanges were likely added late into development. this content was absent from the English release. The Wii Virtual Console version, released exclusively in Japan in 2009, is a direct emulation of the original Japanese MSX2 release. However, the script was revised to align with the 2004 mobile phone port. Which served as the foundation for subsequent re-releases including Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, the HD edition, and then the Master Collection. Character and organisation names originally rendered entirely in uppercase Romanji, which is the system of writing Japanese language with the Roman alphabet. This underwent alterations for two primary reasons: to establish consistency with later entries in the series, and to correct awkward English transliterations. Examples include Grey Fox, Dr. Petrovich, Foxhounder, Shoot Gunner, and Coward Duck. It's also noted that Dr. Petrovich's revised name in this version differs from Dr. Madnar, the standardized spelling used in all other releases. Japanese transliterations of English loanwords were also updated. Most noticeably, silencer was changed to suppressor in all dialogue. However, this change was not applied consistently. The weapon selection screen retained the original text string. Plus, the revised script contains alterations across distinct categories, with modified text indicated in bold, such as removal of specific firearm names. References to actual firearm models mentioned by Big Boss were removed from the dialogue. Clarification of Foxhound terminology, the suffixes, the Teien meaning member or Butai meaning special forces group, were added to instances of Foxhound, where context was ambiguous. The original script used for Foxhounder interchangeably to refer both to the organisation itself and to individual operatives, creating potential confusion. Also, there was full character names upon introduction. Dr. Madnar is now introduced using his complete name, Drago Petrovich Madnar, as his daughter Ellen. This provides greater consistency with how these characters are referenced in later games and in databases. Plus, there's malicious grammatical corrections. Various grammatical refinements were implemented throughout the script. For reference, the corresponding English script for the Subsistence versions has been provided to illustrate how these changes were handled in localization, thanks to the cutting room floor. So now we have the disastrous port known as Metal Gear, the NES version, and due to the MSX2's absence from the North American market, this port served as the West's introduction to the series, much to the dismay of creator Hideo Kojima, who had no involvement in its development and later disfavoured and practically disowned this port.
I'm just curious about the very first Metal Gear game from 1987. The NES version was farmed out to Ultraware. Ultra Games rather, and it was nowhere near as good as the MSX version. It was chopped and changed. The Metal Gear wasn't even in it, which was stupid. Just wondered what went wrong there, what your sort of opinion is, and if you could go back and fix it, what would you change?
It was just all around bad. So I wasn't involved with the Nintendo version at all, and yet it sold million here and in America. And of course, I didn't really like what was going on, and I'd never played the game because it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But then one day I saw it in the bargain bin, being practically given away for free, so I bought it out of curiosity. So the MSX version it started immediately while you're embarking on your stealth mission. But the Famicom version or the Nintendo version started a few steps ahead of that before you embark on your mission, and you're trying to make your way to the building that you have to infiltrate, and these Dobermans come out. And honestly, no matter what I could do, I could not get past that stupid Doberman without being spotted, and I just got frustrated with it, and I never played it from that point on. So I couldn't even get to the first stage without feeling frustrated, and that's just terrible.
But aside from that, with the unused graphics, the MXX2 version features two distinct alert states. Standard alerts display a single exclamation mark above an enemy soldier's head, while high-level alerts triggered by infrared sensors, security cameras or firing unsuppressed weapons display two exclamation marks. During these heightened alert phases, enemy reinforcements pursue the player across multiple screens until a sufficient number of guards are eliminated or the player transitions to a different floor or area. The NES version omits these persistent alert phases entirely. All alerts cancel automatically when transitioning between screens, removing a significant tactical element from the original design. However, unused graphic data within the game's code clearly indicate that the persistent alerts were intended for implementation, but ultimately were unfinished. Interestingly, Snake's Revenge, the NES exclusive sequel that Kojima kinda liked, would successfully incorporate this feature. The handgun icon on the weapon title screen is displayed incorrectly in the Famicom version due to proper tile mapping. The tile intended for the middle bottom portion was mistakenly applied to the bottom right position, while the preceding tile in the game's data was used as a substitute. The correct design can be observed in unused graphic data within the game's code. The NES version addressed this issue by implementing a slightly different icon with the weapon positioned further to the left. Conversely, the flashlight icon exhibits the opposite problem. The Famicom version displays it correctly, while the NES version contains a minor error affecting only the bottom right tile. This mistake is considerably less severe than the handgun icon discrepancy. In the MSX2 version, Big Boss contacts you with this message instead of his usual one if you reach the entrance of building number 2 with the transmitter still in your equipment. This is because you're required to equip the enemy uniform in order to trick the guard to open the door for you. While it is possible to reach the entrance of building number 2 with the transmitter on the NES version as well, it doesn't trigger this message, and it's not as necessary to trick the guards either, since just equipping the enemy uniform will open the door like a keycard would open any other door.
I'm the creator of Ultra games for Nintendo, like Metal Gear where you're a commando searching for deadly weapons.
The US version marked the debut of Ultra Games, a Konami subsidiary created to circumvent Nintendo of America's policy limiting third-party publishers to 5 NES releases per year. Accordingly, the Konami logo was replaced with the Ultra Games branding. Trademark symbols were added next to both the company and title logos, while the copyright text was expanded and repositioned below the main menu. The European version reverted to the Konami logo, though with altered colouring compared to the Japanese release. The trademark symbol beside the Metal Gear logo was modified, and the copyright text was simplified to remove all references to Ultra Games. The weapon selection screen for the handgun, remote-controlled missiles, rocket launcher and grenade launcher received visual refinements in the NES version. As previously noted, the Famicom version handgun suffered from the incorrect tile assignment, which was corrected for the Western release. The colour palette for most icons was slightly lightened, though the landmines and remote-control missiles retained their original colouring. The bomb blast suit icon was recoloured for improved visual clarity. The flashlight icon was redesigned to eliminate visual overlap with the antidote icon positioned above it. Though this introduced a new error affecting the bottom right tile, all remaining equipment selection icons were carried over unchanged. The transceiver screen radio communicator remained nearly identical to the MSX2 original in the Famicom version. The NES version features an entirely new, significantly more detailed design. The word transceiver was recoloured from grey to white and repositioned slightly higher on the screen. In the MXX2 version, upon reaching the heat panel room on the 3rd floor of building number 1, Big Boss contacts the player with instructions to call Schneider for information regarding the location of the remote control missiles needed to destroy the security panel. The Famicom version altered this sequence so that Schneider initiates contact directly and provides the missile location without prompting. The overall changes raises questions regarding intentionality. Schneider's frequency 120.79 is never explicitly provided during the first half of the game. Players can trigger an automatic transmission from Schneider by tuning to this frequency in specific locations, but no character instructs them to do so. Big Boss's original message remains present in the Famicom's version's code in a nearly complete state, suggesting this may have been an oversight rather than a deliberate design choice to assist players. Notably, an identical gameplay situation involving the gas mask on the same floor retained Big Boss's advisory message unchanged. The NES version reverted to the MSX2's original implementation. Additionally, the NES version replaced several military vehicles in background scenery with civilian equivalents. And in the Japanese and American versions, they utilise a 32-character alphanumeric password system consisting of 6 numbers and 26 letters. The European version substantially revised this system, replacing all vowels with the consonants C and F and S with additional numbers and symbols, while rearranging the character layout. The input cursor was changed from a star to an upward pointing arrow to avoid confusion with one of the newly added symbols. Despite these changes, passwords remain cross-compatible between regions through character conversion. This modification was likely mandated by Nintendo's policy changes aimed at preventing profanity in password-generated codes. The Japanese and American versions can generate a password which places the player at the final boss encounter with no equipment, beginning with the 6-character string saying "fuck me," with the remaining spaces filled with ones. A similar password system re-envision occurred in Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. Another oddity is the bomb blast suit location. When contacted in front of the elevator on the roof of building number 1, Schneider provides directions to the bomb blast suit required to traverse the wind barrier. However, the location he describes is incorrect. The suit is actually located in building number 4, situated west of maze between buildings 1 and 2. Building number 4 serves as the NES's version's equivalent to building number 1, which is its basement from the MX2 original, as both locations house Grey Fox as a prisoner. This suggests the bomb blast suit was originally intended to be relocated to the 2nd floor of building 1 during development. The programmers either ran out of time to implement this change or abandoned the idea entirely, neglecting to update Schneider's dialogue accordingly. Plus there's misattributed frequency numbers, a coding error that allows the player to contact Diane using Jennifer's frequency number at the southern end of the desert between buildings number 2 and 3, rather than Diane's correct frequency of 120.91 at that point in the game. A similar oversight occurs in the basement of building 3, one screen west of the elevator in front of a door guarded by 2 laser cameras. Dialing Schneider's initial frequency number in this location triggers an automatic transmission from Jennifer, who provides the location of the card key needed to unlock the door.
Tiger brings you Game Talk, talking games like Snake's Revenge.
Lieutenant, let's put the plan into effect.
Yes, sir. Ammunition check.
I got 2 bullets. Are you okay?
Yeah.
I got key card number 1. Watch out, Metal Gear ahead. Mission accomplished.
Game Talk, Snake's Revenge, the next generation from Tiger Electronics.
Moving on to Snake's Revenge on the NES, it holds a unique position in Metal Gear's history, as the Western-developed sequel that arrived months before Hideo Kojima's official Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake. Originally released exclusively outside of Japan, despite being developed there, the game occupies an awkward space in the franchise, or rather a mixed reaction between the fandom and the canonicity of the overall story. Some of it just seen as a cash grab, whilst acknowledged by others as maybe a curious spin-off entry. Kojima himself has offered measured praise for Snake's Revenge in certain interviews, showing a lot less disdain for it than what he harboured towards the original NES port of Metal Gear. Notably, the developers succeeded in actual Metal Gear mechs this time. Mass-produced units based on the original appear throughout the first half, rather than some shitty computer robot machine at the end of the game. Because yes guys, believe it or not, the NES version is actually worse than it may appear. Konami pretty much just took Kojima's work and just changed it however they saw fit, and really ticked away from the canonicity of the story and pretty much got rid of a TX-55 Metal Gear in exchange for a supercomputer. I know, makes no sense, right?
And although I didn't play the game all the way through to the end, I have spoken to people who have, and I've heard that it's a Metal Gear game, but there's actually no Metal Gear in the game. At the end, there's a giant computer monitor, and when I heard that, I just thought, that's just not right.
But at least Revenge brings that all back, with a new prototype designated Metal Gear 2 serves as the final encounter, or rather the final boss, ironically foreshadowing Kojima's genuine sequel released shortly thereafter. You could say forget about Metal Gear on NES and Snake's Revenge because Kojima pretty much ignored Snake's Revenge entirely and created Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake on the MX2 as the real true sequel. The regional differences with Snake's Revenge is that the European version features a redesigned title screen logo that more closely matches the box art. The font is taller with altered letter forms, rendered in green text with diagonal lines, crossing certain characters. Curiously, the drop shadow uses light green rather than the box art's yellow colouring. The American's logo colour scheme, blue text with orange shadows, mirrors the Famicom version of the original Metal Gear, diverging from the NES's release, which utilised yellow text with blue shadows. European distribution under Konami's own label rather than Ultra Games imprint eliminated all Ultra-related copyright information. This allowed developers to consolidate the main menu directly onto the title screen, removing the need for a separate menu screen entirely. Sharp-eyed observers may notice a conspicuous gap in the European logo adjacent to the letter R. The correct tile exists within the ROM data but was accidentally omitted from the tile map during the implementation. Restoring the missing tile reveals the logo's intended appearance.
My ears,
Before we move on, let's take a quick look at the DOS port of Metal Gear. This version wasn't based on the MSX2 original, but rather the NES version, albeit optimised for Windows. And for those who thought the NES version couldn't be any worse, well, the DOS version really is a lot worser. This port features a unique death animation where characters skeletonize upon death, whenever it's Snake or any of the enemies he faces. However, the game appears to be extremely glitchy in areas, to the point where it's almost impossible to beat the game without using cheats. Health depletion and pacing feel noticeably different. Health drains faster in some DOS builds compared to both the NES and MSX2 versions. And unlike before, enemy health and bosses will all drain dramatically quicker than before. The DOS version is known among the fans for containing gameplay oddities and glitches that don't exist in the MSX2 original, likely due to rushed adaptation and differing PC hardware behaviour at the time. Enemy behaviour, along with camera and alert mechanics, are less consistent and predictable in the MSX2 original. For example, when you go past certain cameras, they don't even really alert the guards. Of course, this was inherited from the NES port, already simplified by design. The difference is it was just never this broken on the NES version, as bad as that game was. And the enemies at times behave strangely, just bashing against a wall without really moving anywhere. The DOS port often exhibits visual and collision irregularities. For example, when you go into your inventory, all the sprite characters just disappear. It's less refined room behaviour as well, and inconsistent enemy scripts compared to both the MSX2 original and even the NES version from which with it was derived, and in turn became the shell of its former self. DOS builds vary somewhat by region and compiler, so specific sequences may behave differently depending on the platform. Soundtracks and the audio effects are also simplified or altered because the DOS build plays through PC speakers sound hardware rather than the original sound chips or MSX2 synthesis. If you thought the mobile phone version was dreadful as I shown in the latter, the DOS version literally destroys your ears. And because I'm that much of a gentleman, I'm going to spare your ears the torture of hearing the dreadful soundtrack which you probably heard at the intro. Altogether, it's probably not the best way to experience Metal Gear as intended. That said, it does feature little cutscenes in certain areas which makes the DOS version unique, even if it is somewhat cursed.
No! That is not Solid Snake!
Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake represents Hideo Kojima's genuine sequel to the original Metal Gear in many ways. It serves as a prototype for what Metal Gear Solid would eventually become had the game been developed in 2D and released exclusively on Japanese 8-bit computers rather than a console with worldwide distribution. Konami later bundled both MSX2 Metal Gear titles with most re-releases of Metal Gear Solid 3, complete with full English localization, though this came at the cost of replacing the original character portraits due to the likeness infringement concerns that represented many of movie celebrities that Kojima often admired, but would instead utilise Yoji Shinkawa's brilliant art style into redesigning these characters that we now know. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake debuted in Japan on the MSX2 in 1990, with a European release following later. Notably, the game never received an official United States release until subsequent releases. The primary differences between versions stem from textual localization rather than the content removal. The Western and European translations rewrote dialogue to improve clarity, adjust tone, and employ idiomatic English rather than providing literal verbatim translations for the Japanese script. Story exposition, character flavor text, and codec-style conversations were rephrased to better align with Western audiences' expectations, consistent with localization practices common to the era. These localized text modifications primarily affected tone rather than constituting censorship. No scenes were removed or replaced, though the emphasis on phrasing of story delivery could differ slightly between regions. The game retained identical gameplay mechanics, cutscene structure, and major story beats across all releases, with no region-specific censorship of content, violence, or thematic elements. With revisional differences, Metal Gear 2 arrived on the Wii Virtual Console in Japan in 2010. The release incorporates various graphical and textural changes designed to align it more closely with the 2004 mobile phone ports, which served as the foundation for versions included in Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence and the HD edition. The opening sequences originally featured a Balmal branded cigarette pack, an obvious parody of the real-world Pall Mall brand. This was changed to Gator brand, with accompanying palette adjustments throughout the image. Curiously, the Lucky Strike inspired design used for the cigarette icon on both the inventory screen and heads-up display remained unaltered, despite being replaced in all other versions. The close-up of Solid Snake's face, concluding the opening prologue, also reused during the ending credits, was redesigned entirely. The original Mel Gibson-inspired appearance was replaced with a stylized design more consistent with Yoji Shinkawa's promotional artwork from later entries in the series, as we touched upon in the latter. All the character portraits used throughout the game's conversation sequences received complete overhauls. The original portraits were largely traced from photographs of contemporary celebrities, with some examples being remarkably blatant. Colonel Campbell clearly drew inspiration from Colonel Troutman of the Rambo film series, while Big Boss essentially depicted Sean Connery with an eye patch superimposed. These likenesses issues likely necessitated replacement when the game was ported to additional platforms in subsequent years. Most of this aesthetic shift aimed to establish visual consistency with how these characters appeared in the later franchise entries. Grey Fox and Master Miller in particular were dramatically altered from their original MSX2 appearances. However, the revised portraits sacrificed the eye and mouth animations presence in the original versions, with Natasha as the sole exception. Natasha, renamed Gustava in all re-releases, received an alternative portrait with closed eyes, specifically for her death scene in other ports. The Virtual Console version repurposes this portrait to create a blinking animation during standard conversations. Following Grey Fox's fistfight with Snake, blood appears on his face, though through sprites laid over his portrait. The Virtual Console version fails to adjust the blood pattern to properly align with his redesigned portrait, unlike other versions which employ an entirely different portrait for this moment. In the ending of Metal Gear 2, the romanized names displayed during the ending credits were revised to match other versions, producing some noticeable inconsistencies, such as Roy Campbell's surname originally received the decidedly awkward romanization of Cayenne Bell in the MXX2 version. The Virtual Console release attempted to correct this to the standard spelling, but due to character limitations the result became Campbell, missing the final letter. Interestingly as well, the fan translation patch by G&T Soft managed to accommodate the complete spelling, suggesting Konami deemed the extra coding effort that was just unwarranted. Similarly, Hori was amended to the more natural Holly, while Kesler became Kazler, and Petrovich was changed to Petrovich, though the manual uses Petrovich without the additional T, which represents the conventional spelling of the actual name. As we mentioned earlier, Dr. Madnar's full name was expanded to Dragor Petrovich Madnar in re-releases, in a change that reflected the Virtual Console's revised script, though space constraints prevented its inclusion in the credits. And Josef Norden was inexplicably renamed Johan Jacobson, but insufficient character space forced abbreviation of the first name to its initial. Both Grey Fox's real name and code name received spelling corrections to align with Metal Gear Solid.
Grey Fox, the name from long ago. It sounds better than Deep Throat. So it is you.
Natasha Markova became Gustava Hefner in re-releases, possibly to avoid confusion with the similarly named Natasha Romanenko from Metal Gear Solid, but also because her surname derives from a character in J.C. Pollock's novel Crossfire, which contributed to several plot elements to the game, including Natasha's tragic romance with Frank. And with Metal Gear D's boss battle, the screen flashing effect that occurs when Metal Gear D sustains damage or is destroyed during its boss encounter was removed in the Virtual Console version to reduce seizure risk. And the script changes in Metal Gear 2, the MXX2 version, originally required players to examine the back of the game's physical case to learn Campbell's second frequency number, functioning as a form of copy protection that would later be re-implemented into the original Metal Gear Solid, where the player has to look at the back of the case to see Meryl's codec number.
In any case, you should contact Meryl by codec. Wasn't her frequency written on the back of the CD case?
Since the Virtual Console version exists as a digital download, Campbell instead directs players to reference a screenshot in the digital manual. During his subsequent frequency change, he helpfully reminds players of the tap code deciphering chart is located within the manual, and that the original dialogue remains present in the game's ROM's data. Those who are playing on the Master Collection may have to look online on the Konami website to find it digitally. Holly White's original dialogue incorrectly states the rooftop is located on the 40th floor when it actually occupies the 31st. The game's manual perpetuated the same error. In the MSX2 version, Holly did not specify which building contained the mine detector. While this information wasn't strictly necessary given that the third floor of the tower building is inaccessible, the clarification provides minor assistance. And Master Miller's advice to Snake underwent multiple revisions across versions. The original Japanese text translates to "don't give up until the end and exert yourself in order to survive" and over. The Virtual Console version rephrased this as "don't give up until the very end and use your strength to survive." The Subsistence version settled on "whatever happens, don't give up. Do whatever it takes to survive, over and out." George Kasler's dialogue differs substantially between the original Japanese MSX2 release and subsequent ports. The MX2 and Virtual Console versions provide extensive background on Red Blaster, explaining his origins at the Soviet Union's Patrice Lumumba University, where he earned the moniker Red Bomber. Later ports simplified this exposition considerably. The Patrice Lumumba University was actually a Moscow institution established in 1960, though it was renamed the People's Friendship University of Russia in 1992, all following the Soviet Union's dissolution, dating the game's narrative. Regardless, it's highly unlikely the elite assassination training was ever part of their curriculum, as Lumumba University functioned as a conventional college, which would have necessitated the line changes regardless, and probably why Konami just changed the idea. The redundant translation across versions stems from Kasler explaining what Red Blaster means in Japanese, which is red explosive. The clarification proved unnecessary for English localization, prompting the rewrite. Kasler mentions of a character named William Morgan, likely reference to an American-born Cuban revolutionary known as Comandante Yankee, whose life parallels Big Boss's backstory, as were both Americans who fought as revolutionaries for the Third World nations. This comparison was presumably removed due to obscurity, though thematically, similar elements resurface in Peace Walker through Big Boss's connection to El Shea.
Could it be the great cacique has come to lead us?
Snake employs Dr. Madnar's full name during their initial encounter on the Virtual Console version, a change from previous releases. Consequently, Kasler's later use of Dr. Madnar's full name when discussing Big Boss's rumoured involvement in the Snatcher project was omitted to avoid redundancy. Plus, Dr. Kiyo Marb's original dialogue was written what appears to have been either broken Russian or Russian-sounding gibberish masquerading as Czech. Later ports completely rewrote his dialogue into authentic Czech for both Japanese and English versions. The Virtual Console version utilised a transliterated version of his new dialogue. The Subsistence script has been provided along corresponding translations, so you can see the reference. In typical Metal Gear fashion, there is always a number one fan helping us out. Grey Fox, Snake's most devoted ally, provides intelligence about Night Fright, one of Big Boss's mercenaries. The original text incorrectly identified him as Night Sight. The firearm mentioned in the original dialogue, the Wei Sheng Shao Kwa Kang, is simply the Chinese phrase for silent handgun. The groundbreaking 1998 release of Metal Gear Solid merged cinematic storytelling with interactive gameplay in unprecedented fashion, establishing new standards for narrative-driven gaming experiences. As the initial release, the Japanese version lacks several features present in subsequent international releases. The most significant differences include Japanese voice acting and text localization, and they are all employed throughout. Numerous unused dialogue files exist on the disc, including alternative takes of existing lines. The font used for captions and item descriptions matches the typeface previously featured in all console versions of police notes. There's no difficulty selection screen that appears when starting a new game. Players proceed directly to the opening cutscene. The Japanese version's difficulty level would later form the basis for easy mode in international releases. However, an option to replay the game with radar disabled can be unlocked after completing it once. Only 13 possible codenames appear on the endgame results screen as well, compared to the 48 codenames featured in the later versions. The 12 standard codenames correspond to those used for hard difficulty in subsequent releases, with Fox representing the highest achievable rank. The 13th codename, Big Boss, is only obtainable by playing with radar disabled while meeting the requirements for the Fox designation. And Johnny Saska, the guard stationed at Merrill's cell, wears shorts after being knocked unconscious and stripped of his uniform. International versions leave him completely naked, with pixelation obscuring his ass. The demo theatre was not yet implemented in this version, though menu assets for it do exist within the game's code. The Japanese version contains demo theatre in an unfinished state, originally accessible as a subsection of the special menu. The coding supports all available demo roles, including scrapped Roll C and Roll D options, which were almost certainly intended to play throughout all cutscenes during what was internally designed as Red Ninja playthroughs. These playthroughs, normally available after completing the game once, modify certain texture models and play the Metal Gear Solid main theme during the ending credits. Text descriptions also differ from the finalized demo theatre featured in the Integral version. Now we come to the Psycho Mantis memory card scans, the catalogue of Konami games detectable by Psycho Mantis during the cutscene preceding his boss battle is subsequently larger in the Japanese version compared to the international releases, reflecting Konami's more extensive Japanese market presence. Consequently, many of Psycho Mantis' references to Japan-exclusive titles such as Tokimeki Memorial, a popular dating simulation with numerous spin-offs, were removed and replaced with references to localized titles for international audiences. This included a special voice-only cameo from Kojima, triggered by possessing saved data from both Snatcher and Police Notes.
見えるぞ貴様の記憶がときメモが好きなようだなポリスノーツが好きなようだな小島作品が好きなようだないつも応援してくれてありがとう KCE ジャパンの作るゲームが好きなようだな
Contrary to popular belief, Psycho Mantis does not deliver a specific line when detecting a Snatcher save file as he does with Police Notes, despite it being required to trigger Kojima's cameo. Mantis simply treats it as any other Konami game, only paying special attention when detected alongside Police Notes. This was likely due to the PlayStation version of Snatcher being developed by KCE Tokyo rather than KCE Japan. The North American version released only 1 month after the Japanese original, making it considerably closer to that version with the European releases that followed several months later. As for additions, difficulty selection screens were added when starting a new game, featuring 3 initially available settings: easy, normal and hard, plus an unlockable 4th option, extreme, accessible after completing the game once, something that we'd see continue usually later into the series. Easy mode replicates the Japanese version's difficulty level, while hard and extreme disable the radar entirely. A 43rd ghost photograph was added to the 42 featured in the Japanese version. This depicts the ghost of Jemery Blaustein, the game's translator, who can be photographed on Disc 2 by returning to the snowfield where Sniper Wolf was encountered. His ghost appears when photographing a specific tree. However, the Metal Gear Solid official mission handbook incorrectly states his ghost is found near Sniper Wolf's corpse. But interestingly, taking pictures of ghosts in the Metal Gear series would continue through Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel and the likes of Peace Walker and even Metal Gear Solid 3 when you face the Sorrow. Changes were also made to the alert modes, which were renamed from Danger, in the sight of a guard, and Escape, cooldown after leaving a guard's sight, to Alert and Evasion respectively, and this nomenclature was retained in all subsequent series entries. There was even instances of awkward English and incorrect text which were corrected, such as the Ocelot label during the Ocelot boss fight. Several items were renamed to address unusual naming conventions. There was a all-new narrower font which was implemented for cutscenes and codec conversations. And even textures for Hideo Kojima's title card with the opening stage were altered from the Japanese "a game made by Hideo Kojima" to the now iconic "a Hideo Kojima game."
Did you like it?
All removed game detection lines from the Japanese version preceding the Psycho Mantis boss battle were replaced with explicit references to Konami titles, actually published in the West, specifically Suikoden, or Azure Dreams and Vandal Hearts and Castlevania. Sympathy of Night, a general detection line for fighting games, were also added. As for European versions, the game released in 5 different languages, each featuring native voice acting alongside standard localizations. The UK version retained the American voice acting with additional modifications, while other versions received complete native language dubs. In the UK, the camera work in certain cutscenes received notable revisions. The conversation between Snake and Ocelot preceding the first torture session originally contained a segment in which Ocelot describes the French origins of electric torture. This version went unused and was replaced with an edited iteration that omitted this portion. I mean, come on, since Ocelot really doesn't like the French, he makes it pretty clear.
I never trust a Frenchman.
However, the edit creates an awkward discontinuity with Snake responding, "But I've never heard that before," without apparent context. The European versions muted this now unnecessary line instead.
I'm going to run a high voltage electric current through your body. If it's just for a short time, it won't kill you.
But I never heard that before.
You're a tough guy, Snake. I'm going to run a high voltage electric current through your body. If it's just for a short time, it won't kill you. You're a tough guy, Snake.
German changes saw the font that underwent another revision, this time incorporating an almost complete ACSI2 character set.
Oder du tötest mich. Es macht keinen Unterschied. Gut. Nun hat seinen logischen Platz.
Ich brauche den Mann. Lass ihn in Ruhe.
Lass es mich spüren. Bring mich zurück zum Leben.
As for the Italian changes, the item description for ketchup differs from all other versions. While international releases reference the source Italian's origins, the Italian version omits the detail entirely. And I mean, who can blame them? When you're talking about proper Italian tomato sauce, you can't put it in the same category as standard ketchup.
Hai usato il ketchup? Ci ho messo un'eternità a trovarlo. È proprio del colore e della consistenza giusta. Usalo bene, ok?
At the beginning of the first encounter with Vulcan Raven, the English version has Raven declare "send him a message," which translates to as Italian as "mandi amoli and messaggio." The Italian version modifies this to Comitato do Accoglienza, meaning welcome committee.
Comitato di accoglienza!
When Sniper Wolf shoots Merrill, Colonel Campbell alerts Snake with, "Snake, Merrill has been shot." This line was mistranslated in the Italian version as Snake, Merrill è stata sparata. Since the verb spara is intransitive in Italian, this phrase is grammatically incorrect. The equivalent English meaning would be, Snake, Merrill has been shot away. Shot away? What? I mean, look guys, I'm not the best at pronunciation and I think the accent doesn't help, but man, the Italian language is really good.
小島秀夫監督作品メタルギアソリッドインテグラル難易度全5ランク Konami.
So released 9 months after the original version, the Integral represents an expanded edition of Metal Gear Solid exclusive to Japan, incorporating all additional features from international releases alongside further enhancements. A very easy difficulty setting has been introduced when starting a new game, and this mode equips the player with a silenced MP5 featuring unlimited ammunition from the outset. The MP5 replaces the FAMAS rifle in the player's inventory, which does not appear in this mode. The room that normally contains it is empty. Completing the game on Very Easy does not display a results screen after the credits end, nor does it allow players to save their completion data. First-person view mode unlocks on the special menu when the game detects a completed save file as well. This mode initiates the standard story on normal difficulty, but enables shooting and movement in first-person perspective by pressing the triangle button twice, allowing gameplay similar to a first-person shooter with controls closely resembling the game's intrusion mode. This feature would later be implemented into the main game in the PC version. Alternative enemy soldier placements and patrol routes become available by possessing completed save files from either the original Metal Gear Solid or Integral itself. When this condition is met, the words "Alternative Round" display above the difficulty selection screen when starting a new game. English voice acting from the American version replaced the original Japanese voice work, and subtitles for the cutscenes and codec conversations can be set to Japanese or English, though other text elements such as mission logs and item descriptions remain in Japanese. In other changes, we see Snake wearing a tuxedo, and we can see Frank Jaeger wear a red cyborg ninja suit. Meryl's outfit changes to a sneaking suit as well when starting a game from a completed save file written in red. This modification was carried over to Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. 2 new secret code frequencies were added in the main game. Frequency 140.66 plays a selection of previously unused music tracks in 3 different areas, including arranged renditions of the opening credits and prologue theme from Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Frequency 14007 plays developer commentary for the current area. It's thanks to this that we'd see something similar go on to Metal Gear Solid 3 with the healing codex. A Pocket Station application for a peripheral released exclusively in Japan can be downloaded after completing the main game and acquiring a codename. This minigame tasks players with helping Dr. Naomi create a vaccine for the Foxdie virus by trading codenames with other users for a specified time period. Upon completing the objective, players can upload the data into the VR disc, which unlocks ninja missions if requirements have been met. And in terms of removed content, VR training mode is no longer accessible on the main game discs. Instead, the mode was relegated to a separate VR disc. This content would subsequently be released as a standalone title, Metal Gear Solid VR Missions in North America, and Metal Gear Solid Special Missions in Europe. Also, with VOX changes and censorship, a discrepancy exists between certain file dates. Demo data, which contains cutscenes and scripted demo sequences, predates VOX data, which holds voice audio and spoken dialogue for each language version by 3 months. Similarly, radio data containing codec conversations, related audio and text entries, and stage data containing level data and enemy placement, area-specific scripts, and event triggers share this temporal inconsistency. Certain lines were censored or completely removed in the Spanish translation. The revised release catalogued as every replaced reference to diazepam as droga, meaning drug, with a more sociably acceptable pharmaco, which specifically refers to pharmaceutical medications. The term droga carries connotations of illegal narcotics in Spanish, since voice actors could not be brought back to re-record any affected lines. Every instance of the word droga was covered, and often poorly, with radio static. Weirdly, this modification responded to an ongoing controversy in Spain in which the game was accused of promoting drug consumption. Ah yes, you gotta love these kind of censorship controversies, because often than not they are just as ridiculous as they sound. And truthfully, you could say maybe just unnecessary. Metal Gear Solid for the Game Boy Color, released in Japan as Metal Gear Ghost Babel, represents an 8-bit entry into the Metal Gear series. Despite carrying the Metal Gear Solid name internationally, the game retains a completely different plot and cast from the PlayStation Classic. Unlike the earlier MSX entries, Kojima served only as a producer. The game contains subtle hints towards the next major installment as well, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, by depicting the protagonist, Jack, or rather Raiden, completing his VR missions whilst awaiting his future simulation at the Big Shell. As for regional differences, the Japanese version released as Metal Gear Ghost Babel. The international version adopted the Metal Gear Solid branding, likely to capitalise on the PlayStation game's commercial success. Consequently, the logo positioning differs slightly between the Japanese and international versions. Notably, the American version is the only release featuring a registered trademark symbol. A license by Nintendo screen was added to the American European versions, appearing before the Konami logo at the startup. The European version features support for 5 different languages accessible from the options screen, with English serving as the default. These language selection menus exist within the code for both Japanese and American versions, but were not implemented as those releases contain only a single script version each. The European version actually contains the entire Japanese script within its code, though it remains inaccessible through normal means. As for the radar, on-screen radar indicators were appropriately localized for each region as well. Both sets of indicators are stored in all 3 versions of the game. Plus there was something called Idea Spy 2.5. It is a story within a story unlocked in the Japanese and European versions from the second playthrough and onward, presented as an in-game radio drama. It becomes accessible by navigating to the codec screen and dialing frequency 140.07. The narrative is divided into 13 episodes, one corresponding to each stage of the game. This feature was intended for the American version, but was not fully implemented due to insufficient ROM space. Consequently, the frequency was disabled in the American release, and Shuyu Murata, the author's entry in the ending credits, was removed.
Communicator Entertainment Program, Idea Spy 2.5, Episode 1, New York. Here in the city where dreams come true and desires rule, something is being bought, sold, and thrown away, even as we speak.
The European version, utilising a 32 megabit ROM compared to the 16 megabit ROM used by other versions to accommodate multiple language settings, faced no such space constraints. As a result, the entire story is fully present in all 5 supported languages.
I stare at the stars and the sky up above and think What am I made of?
Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty is the highly anticipated sequel to Metal Gear Solid. Rather than allowing players to control Snake this time throughout the entire game as many expected from a straightforward sequel, Metal Gear Solid 2 subverted expectations by making Snake playable only during the prologue before forcing players to assume the role of Raiden, a new character who desperately wanted to emulate Snake. For the remainder of the experience, this represents perhaps the most significant meta-commentary in gaming history, with themes such as the nature of existence and most importantly the digital society.
Who am I really? No one quite knows who or what they are.
In terms of version differences, the initial US release of Sons of Liberty, launched in November 13th, 2001, featured considerably more graphic blood textures and effects throughout multiple segments of the game. This includes Marine crew corpses during the Tanka chapter displaying bloodier textures with increased and more defined stab wounds, plus open wounds from their throats being slit. The neck wounds were originally part of the character models themselves, resulting in strange geometry, visible when viewing the models from certain angles. Blood particle effects were intensified during the execution scenes, such as Ocelot shooting a Kurlukovich soldier in the face, and Vamp slicing a SEAL's body and ultimately slitting his throat, with blood dripping from the ceiling afterward and forming a puddle beneath the corpse. Two SEAL corpses sharing textures displayed more blood on their chest and arms after being killed by Vamp. Peter Stillman's body in the Shell 2 core featured less blood and different camera angles compared to later versions. These effects were reduced and censored in the Japanese release on November 29th, 2001 and the European release on March 8th, 2002. The censored version served as the foundation for all future releases, including Substance, the HD Collection and the Master Collection. In the Japanese version, voices and text are all in Japanese. Mr. X employs a voice changer when quoting Shadow Moses' dialogue to Raiden, playing corresponding audio clips from Metal Gear Solid. For example, when stating "Watch out, there are Claymore mines in that area," or "Neither enemy nor friend," the audio switches to Grey Fox.
ディープスロートとでも名乗っておこう。
ディープスロート？シャドウモセス事件の？
ミスター X とでも言っておこ
う。ミスター X？ どうした？なぜ言い直す？
そんなことはどうでもいい。
何者だ？なぜ俺に忠告を？
When telling Raiden to refer to him as Deep Throat and being questioned whether they mean as from Shadow Moses, a newly recorded voice line from the original Grey Fox voice actor responds, Mr. X then. An additional interaction involving Donald Anderson and the DARPA chief occurs as well.
これを使え。セキュリティカードだ。セキュリティレベル2の扉が開く。中央塔にも入れる。
このカードはパンという人体通電技術を使っている。
それと注意しろ。
Solid Snake and Solidus Snake share the same voice actor in the Japanese version, deliberately creating confusion regarding whenever Solid Snake is actually the terrorist leader until Solidus is revealed. Now, this would have been interesting if this was implemented into the English version, because the audience would have believed that Solid Snake was a terrorist, especially if they didn't allow us to play the Tanka chapter up until Raiden and Snake talk about what actually happened during them events. Thus then, the Patriot's deception works well with the overall plot, not revealing Solidus right away.
Stop impersonating him. I'm a whole different game from Liquid.
Olga Gurlukovich shares the same voice actor as Meryl from Metal Gear Solid, further confusing fans of MGS1 as to whether Solid Snake is conspiring with a terrorist. This explains why Raiden immediately contacts Pliskin via codec after encountering Olga, speaking with Solidus, who sounded like Pliskin and Solid Snake on the roof of Strut E.
ギアよ。
ロシア人の女兵士を見かけた。
ああ、彼女はオルガ・ゴルルコビッチ。
なぜ知ってる？
お前と違ってブリーフィングを受けたからな。
デッドセルではないのか？
It's no doubt the Japanese version works better for the overall plot, because of these simple voice acting changes deepens the suspicion of the characters, just like it did in Metal Gear Solid 5.
Now do you remember who you are? What you were meant to do?
When starting a new game, a first-time option becomes available, presenting a questionnaire voiced by Rosemary that asks about the player's experience with the first Metal Gear Solid and action games generally. Responses affect which difficulty settings become available and whenever the game begins with the tanker chapter or skips directly to the plant chapter. If the game detects a cleared save file on the memory card, the option to play the tanker or plant chapters individually or in the same playthrough is added.
ここでの前作はプレイステーション版メタルギアソリッドのことを、クリアは最後まで見たことを定義します。
Difficulty settings are labelled differently, ranging from easy to very hard. In the American version and all subsequent releases, difficulty settings range from very easy to hard. A basic actions mode was added as a gameplay tutorial accessible by selecting Special from the main menu. Boss Survival and Casting Theatre modes are also added to the Special menu after completing the game once. During repeated playthroughs of the tanker chapter on the same save file, a suppressor for the USP handgun can be found on the second floor of the Crow's Nest after defeating Olga Golukovich. And after completing the second playthrough, Snake and Raiden wear sunglasses on every odd-numbered playthrough, either through 3rd, 5th, 7th and so on. This is the first version as well to remove the brown coloration from the non-lethal weapon HUD icons present in the US release. This change persists throughout all future re-releases. As for the European version, 3 variants were produced, a multi-language version with text in English, French and German, and Italian versions, and even Spanish versions. Unlike the previous game, only English voices are available. In addition to context and changes from the Japanese version, the European Extreme was added as a difficulty setting alongside the standard Extreme setting after clearing the game once. European Extreme increases enemy damage output and vastly extends enemy sight ranges, allowing them to detect the player from much greater distances. Now for the Korean version, voices are in English with text in Hangul. The first time option when starting a new game was removed. Instead, the game requires players to complete both the tanker and plant chapters on their first playthrough, matching the American version. FHM supplied posters adoring various locations throughout the game were replaced with new public domain images. This change also appears in the document of Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance. An expanded version of Metal Gear Solid 2 released for Xbox first, and then followed by PlayStation later on in Japan and the US and Europe and so forth. Voices are all in English for all regions including Japan. All content from the European version is present, and for the first time option after starting a new game was removed. Instead, players are given the choice to play through the tanker and plant chapters in one playthrough or individually from the outset. The visual effects of the thermal goggles as well, when equipped by the player, are now changed. And Solidus Snake's line, when emerging from hiding in Arsenal Gear's rectum, was changed from No More Games Raiden to No More Games Jack, maintaining consistency with Solidus' characterization as he never addresses Raiden by his codename in any other instance and always uses his real name considering their background.
No more games, Raiden. At least you know. No more games, Jack. At least you know.
In The Sons of Liberty, Snake can say good and alright when correctly photographing Metal Gear Ray. In Substance, he only says good, and this change carries over to all future versions.
Twice about their nuclear strategy in the light of the military dominance spelled out by
Good.
The shift in the balance of power will mean a new world.
All right.
Textures with non-power of 2 dimensions were automatically resized to the nearest power of 2 for the Xbox and PC ports, introducing compression artifacts in most cases. This issue carries all over to versions of the HD Collection and Master Collection. This was necessary as early DirectX and OpenGL did not support textures with non-power of 2 dimensions until the release of OpenGL 2.0 in late 2004. All particle and smoke effects run at a double speed on the Xbox and PC ports, and this issue still carries all over to versions of the HD and Master Collection, which I spoke of briefly in one of my videos. Vector-based rain effects are not scaled properly on the Xbox and PC ports. This issue carries over to all versions of the HD Collection and Master Collection. And the skybox and cloud models during the plant intro cutscene failed to load, and of course this carries over as well. And in the engine room on the PlayStation 2 version there appears to be a gate where you can dispose of soldiers. However, in later ports it seems this gate has been removed, but in the PS2 version, like you can normally do in the sediment pool to get rid of guards, you can't do it here. Yeah, strange. Also, when you have to defuse the bombs in the big shell, if you click on the map, on the PS2 version the bomb signs are in red, whereas in later versions they're in a black colour. It's common knowledge how poorly executed these ports were. If you're interested, I've already covered this extensively in a video you can watch here, documenting everything from spelling mistakes and slow glitchy mechanics to oddly coloured textures and filters, including another video where I dive deep into cut content in Metal Gear Solid 2. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater is the third entry in the prestigious Metal Gear Solid series, taking players through the historic tensions of the Cold War and the race between nations. The game explores the origins of Big Boss and those who shaped his tragic, yet brilliant story in what many consider the finest entry in the franchise. In terms of version differences, North American and Japanese versions, North America received the game first, with Japan following 1 month later. Both versions are largely identical in content aside from their respective languages. However, the Japanese version includes an additional option in the special menu titled Special Camouflage Key Disc, which allows insertion of various MGS3 music CDs to unlock secret camouflages. As for the European version, Europe received the game several months later with various additions and alterations. Similar to Metal Gear Solid 2, the European version includes the European Extreme difficulty setting. Demo Theatre was added, allowing playback to the game's cutscenes. A duel mode was added consisting of the game's boss fights under normal or special conditions. Various face camouflage based on national flags were added. The special camouflage key disc functionality from the Japanese version is retained. And there's 2 extra stages that were added to Snake vs Monkey, such as the Return of the Living Apes and the Apes of Wrath. Numerous cutscenes were edited to reduce violence and blood. The scene depicting Big Boss meeting Ocelot was modified. The amount of blood on the ground was vastly reduced. The scene showing Eva being harmed by Colonel Volgin was also modified. The blue flashes were mostly removed and the blue electrical energy no longer covers his entire arm. The pool of blood around Volgin when he is near the barrel was made a lighter red. And the scene showing a scientist, Granning, being catapulted into the air with a barrel and then falling to the ground was also modified. The lightning bolts travelling through his dead body were removed, and 2 blue flashes were recoloured white. The scene depicting Big Boss being captured and beaten by Colonel Volgin was also modified with the blue lightning, which was mostly removed, and when not removed was recoloured white. The scene showing Big Boss being knocked unconscious was also modified. Bloodstains around him were reduced, and the scene depicting Big Boss losing his right eye was modified, with the blood made a bit more lighter of a paler colour. Blood around Big Boss after losing his right eye was reduced, and at the end of the first fight against Colonel Volgin, 2 blue electrical discharges on his body were recoloured white. The blood Colonel Volgin coughs up as well was also reduced. The lightning strike hitting Volgin was modified for the amount of lightning that was reduced. The close-up on Volgin was modified, the amount of lightning hitting him was reduced, and the flashes were even removed. And the scene showing Volgin engulfed in flames was modified, where the smoke around Volgin was removed. And the motorcycle accident scene was modified. The blood around Eva was made a lighter colour. As for the Japanese release, it's completely uncensored, which is bizarre because considering how brutal MGS3 can be, the same can be said about late entries that the Japanese version censors. Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence is probably by far the best version of this game we probably will ever get, and it comes with a new host of editions. In North America and Japan, this version was available in either a 2-disc set or a 3-disc limited edition set. The European version featured the 3-disc set by default. Why they couldn't do that for the above, I really don't know. Disc 1 contains the Snake Eater main game, and Disc 2 contains an online multiplayer mode along with Boss Duel mode and various other extras. Disc 3 presents a 3.5-hour movie-style presentation of MGS3's story with special cutscenes filling in gameplay sections. There's a lot of great things that Subsistence had to offer, probably a lot of things that you guys are aware of. But did you know that there's in-game photos that you can take with a camera that can be transferred to Metal Gear Acid 2 on the PSP, whilst viewing through the Solid Eye peripheral included with that game? It was like looking through sort of a hologram, and looking through it you could see cool little theatre scenes. And then sadly we have the dreaded Metal Gear Solid HD collection. The HD version was released in 2011 for PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and in 2012 for PlayStation Handheld Vita. It is based on the Subsistence version, but not all content was carried over, and that's what makes it so terrible. It lost everything from Snake vs Monkey, the boss duel and online modes were all excluded. Snake vs Monkey's exclusion renders of the banana camouflage and monkey masks were completely unused, even though they was in the game's files. The secret theatre movies were not carried over.
I've discovered that he will be the main character in the next game. I've used a time warp to come back, to wipe out the fool that forced me out of my main character's chair. And if Big Boss didn't exist, he would be erased as well.
And the secret Guy Savage minigame was omitted. Consequently, dialogue between Snake and his support team specific to his dream sequence goes completely unused. Yep, cut content.
Okay, so there's this big pile of crap, right?
It's not really well known in the Metal Gear fandom how bad the HD edition is, because it can easily go overlooked. Because not only does it take away some of the visual and audio effects, it also removes dialogue and so forth. For example, some of the visual effects such as depth of field and heat mirages were reduced, and at times these effects were completely absent from the PlayStation 2 version. And vector-based rain effects do not have their width scaled properly, making rain extremely difficult to see in certain areas and cutscenes. Metal Gear Solid 2 also had this same problem. This same issue exists in the 2002 Xbox and 2003 PC releases of MGS2 Substance, and of course the Master Collection. For anyone who owns a PC, you'll find anyone who's an OG of Metal Gear will tell you that the best port to play this game on is on the old PlayStation 2 version, or to either emulate it on a PlayStation 2 emulator. Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops is a direct sequel to Metal Gear Solid 3, released exclusively for PlayStation Portable. This was supposedly the first mainline entry in the series for a portable platform, though it was deployed without Hideo Kojima's direction, and mechanicity of the story's lore is often debated. In terms of regional differences, in the European version, there's 12 additional soldier types that were added. These are similar to the retailer-themed soldiers from the Japanese version, but they are instead based on the national flags and European countries. 2 new careers were added for characters, Bait causes stronger enemies to appear when they're active in missions, and Stuntman allows characters with this career to recover faster from knockouts. A boss rush mode was added, and 2 maps from the game's story were made available for multiplayer, Western Wilderness and Ravine. Even additional spy reports were added for story mode for the European version, and the passwords used to unlock unique characters were all changed. The key config option on the main menu was renamed to a more localized button configuration. Altogether, that's really all the regional differences are between the Japanese version and European releases.
The choices within my hands. How can we ever protect and fight without time?
Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker is yet another direct sequel to Metal Gear Solid 3. Set in 1974, Big Boss leads a mercenary unit called MSF to establish a new nation, as they face a conspiracy involving the CIA and their development of AI-controlled weapons in Costa Rica. Peace Walker would later receive the HD remaster treatment on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, getting a standalone release in Japan while being included as part of the Metal Gear Solid HD collection in the West. And let me tell you, out of all the HD editions, Peace Walker was definitely the superior one, considering all it did was improve on what it was already good at, rather than taking away anything that it had. In terms of regional differences, the Japanese version features in-game items based on actual real-life products that were licensed for the game. These consist of recovery items based on food and beverages like Doritos and Mountain Dew, along with magazines based on actual publications. In international versions, these were replaced with generic or fictionalized equivalents. The Japanese version also includes t-shirt designs for player characters based on these products, and other collaborations, though they could only be unlocked by logging into a Japanese PSN account and entering specific passwords with the game's extra screen. The Japanese version also features numerous downloadable content that wasn't carried over to the international versions. This includes additional t-shirt designs based on collaborations with the Monster Hunter franchise,
Creatures, even rarer than a talking cat.
and the manga Arakawa Under the Bridge.
Sister.
銃を捨てよ。ナイフを持て。接近戦は CQC。センパーファイですね、神よ。
神様はそんな的確なアドバイスはしねえよ。
シルエットからして違う伝説の人です。
As well as an alternative voice sets for AI weapons based on regional accents. Now this one's interesting in terms of a piece of cut content, if you will. Mission 20, titled Torture Chamber Escape, features a torture sequence similar to the one in the original Metal Gear Solid, where Big Boss is tortured by Dr. Strangelove. In most versions of the game, she uses lightning rods, and the player must rapidly tap the triangle button to survive. And believe me, you're guaranteed finger cramps after you've done. This version was also intended for the Japanese release, but it ended up being replaced with an altered version of the same sequence. Instead of lightning rods, Strangelove uses laughing rods, which caused Big Boss to go through uncontrollable laughter. This change was likely made to secure a lower 0 rating for Japanese release, since Peace Walker was actually targeted towards a younger audience than previous games in the series. As a result, later scenes and conversations that reference the torture sequence differ between the two versions, particularly between the Japanese and Western ones.
覚悟はいいか。電磁くすぐり棒だ。周囲に発生した電解が全身の情報性神経路を直接刺激する。
くすぐりの系とは随分古典的だな。
痛みに耐える訓練はしているだろう。これは。
And there are differences between the Japanese and English version of the script. The Japanese version includes briefing tapes, some of the licensed items mentioned earlier as well. In the briefing tape for the naked camo, Miller expresses his desire to go skydiving naked in the Japanese version. Because I mean, hey, why not?
Because you used to run around with your shirt off. Is that true?
Don't believe everything you hear. They called me naked because I went in without gear or food. I had to procure everything on site.
You mean they sent you into the jungle without even a pair of pants? On a halo jump from 35,000 feet? Sweet Jesus, you are a legend.
You're busting my balls, aren't you, Kaz?
Little bit, yeah.
Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes is a standalone prologue to the later released Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Set several months after the events of Peace Walker, Big Boss is called back into action to rescue Chico and former ally turned double agent working for Cypher, Paz, from a US naval prison facility in Cuba. The mission sets forth a chain of events that establishes the plot for The Phantom Pain, and has been cited as a potential simulation through the eyes of Venom Snake based on real events. There really isn't much to talk about, sadly, in terms of regional differences and cut content, because both regions actually stay very aligned. But for example, the Japanese version shows the bomb extraction scene at the end of the main mission from a different camera angle, to obscure Paz's exposed organs, which remains uncensored in every other region. This is particularly bizarre considering the Japanese version of MGS3 permitted graphic violence and gore. Additional briefing tapes are also added in the Japanese version, which contains a set of 5 additional briefing tapes in a folder titled Peace and Kazuhira Blues. These are excerpts from a previously released Peace Walker drama album at the same time, detailing the first meeting between Big Boss and Kazuhira Miller in a series of tracks titled First Encounter. Since the Japanese version supports English subtitles, these tapes are fully translated within the game.
着もいつかつける。いいだろう。そうだ。あんた、女は何人くらいだ？ん？
Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots concludes this epic story of Solid Snake through a soldier's last will to bring closure to a system dependent on war. The Shadow himself must put to rest the elite cabal controlling the world in his final mission in the Old Age. The game is notorious for its exceptionally lengthy cutscenes and certain plot holes, and of course it's remaining as an exclusive to PlayStation 3 at this moment in time, with no subsequent ports as of yet, though fans eagerly await the possibility. The only oddity of this game is when the language is set to Spanish, the help text displayed at the bottom of the screen when highlighting the normal Solid difficulty setting appears in Italian. As far as I'm aware, there are no regional differences or significance. MGS4 was released simultaneously in Japan, North America and Europe with identical main game content across all versions. There are no removed cutscenes, altered plot points, changed dialogue or censorship of violence between all regions. The narrative experience remains consistent when playing in Japan, the United States and Europe. The only difference is the box art and editions that vary by region. Japan, North America and Europe each receive different packaging and limited editions with distinct bonus items such as figurines and soundtrack discs. but ultimately these are physical extras rather than game content changes. Metal Gear Solid 5 is the 5th main game in the Metal Gear Solid franchise, following the events of Ground Zeroes, and it also marked the end of the series as we know since Kojima's departure, after an ungraceful exit owed to numerous difficulties during development, all of which included internal conflicts between Kojima and Konami that ultimately left Metal Gear Solid 5 feeling like something was missing. Episode 51, Kingdom of the Flies, is a mission that was cut from the game during development due to time constraints, and it's now well known to most of the fandom. It would have concluded the storyline of Eli, or rather Liquid, and his fellow child soldiers stealing Salamphropus, culminating in a final battle between Venom Snake and himself. Cutscenes and storyboards of the mission were showcased in an incomplete state as a feature on the Metal Gear Solid 5 Collector's Edition disc. Despite its late removal, references to the mission still exist in the game's files, and it's referenced directly in the game's timeline at the ending. Sadly, this is content you couldn't experience, though one could imagine if they may have included gameplay elements such as defeating Liquid inside Metal Gear. The phantom pain still lives on, I suppose.
I'm not me. I'm just a copy of you. I will surpass my father. Destroy my father. Destroy you! I'll kill all of Cypher. I'll destroy your precious world!
Initially, the Battle Gear, a smaller anti-Metal Gear weapon developed by Huey, was intended to be deployable a buddy for missions. The logic was fully completed, as were all the required assets including sounds, cutscenes, models and particle effects. Though cutscenes related to the vehicle remain in the game, it was cut as a buddy during playtesting due to balancing issues and as confirmed by Hideo Kojima in the game's strategy guide. Instead, it only remains in-game as an asset for deployed missions. Many have questioned the seemingly pointless nature of the Battle Gear development cutscenes if the vehicle is unusable, though it still can be utilised via a mod as a texture rather than adding any of its game-breaking mechanics. As for unused enemies, guard dogs were included in the game until playtesting, where they were removed. The cited reason was that they were not as fun to sneak past according to Kojima. Numerous assets remain present in the game, along with some logic. Despite their removal, enemies can sometimes be heard speaking to them while searching for the player, and there are still signs warning of guard dogs in some areas. We saw this in Ground Zeroes, but if you noticed, there was actually no dogs in Camp Omega. And for unused weapons, Skullface's sawn-off lever action rifle at one point was intended to be usable. Called the Skull Custom, the rifle occupied the sidearm slot, though it was categorised as a shotgun. The S1000 icon is used as a placeholder. Attempting to spawn into a map with the weapon will soft-lock the game, but it can be called in via supply drop. Its reload animation is broken and cannot be reloaded on command or when emptied. And for unused dialogue, there is files in the game where audio exists of Huey and KOTOR singing Happy Birthday to Snake personally. While Mother Base staff do sing to Snake on your birthday, if you said it at the particular time, Huey is present there of course, but never sings, and KOTOR is there as well, but you only ever hear him say Happy Birthday to you, and it seems that depending on how you played, either Huey or KOTOR, from what I've gathered, would have personally sung to you, similarly to how Rescuing Quiet provides an additional birthday scene.
Happy birthday, congratulations. Happy birthday with salutations. Happy birthday, may your skies stay blue. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, congratulations. Happy birthday with salutations. Happy birthday, may your skies stay blue. Happy birthday to you! Happy birthday, Snake!
And check this out as well, there's also audio of Skullface making combat sounds, mostly grunts suggesting that you were perhaps supposed to fight him. However, some of these could be from the ending sequence in which Venom shoots off Skullface's limbs with his shotgun. Skullface's sound bank features sound assets suggesting there was originally meant to be a boss fight against him. I mean, most definitely. The player would have had a choice between killing him and perhaps even taking him back to Mother Base as a prisoner, just as we had the option with Quiet, but I guess it wouldn't have made sense given on the themes and the nature of revenge and how it often leaves the person feeling empty once they've taken it.
I haven't finished yet. Please. I put down my gun. You don't care what I have to say, big boss? Pull the trigger then. Shoot. You're only going to kill a man. Come now. What are you doing? You sure about this? There. Enough. Kill him. For me. This way. Where you going? You think you're a free man? Right.
Interestingly as well, while most of the Ground Zero's Paz's textures were used, the upper area in one texture went unused, and looking more closely, the upper area shows a section with a scar similar to the boss from MGS3. And for D-Dog's original appearance, concept art and internal files show that DD was originally going to be a Rhodesian Ridgeback. This can be re-enabled through a mod, but a demo was first showcased at E3 2013 to demonstrate the engine's visual capabilities, and here the African areas featured far more jungle environment, hinting at MGS5 perhaps being set somewhere in Rhodesia or even Mozambique, and may have shown how Big Boss may have met Frank, and how Kojima originally intended the story to play out. As for regional differences, the Japanese release of the game, as well as the international Steam version, had one cutscene censored due to violent imagery. The scene occurs during one of the conversations with Paz, in which she opens an incision in her stomach and removes a bomb. On versions released outside of Japan, with the exception of the international Steam version, her intestines are also graphically removed from her stomach in the process. However, in the Japanese version, the camera has been repositioned slightly higher so that this happens just off frame. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is the most absurd entry into the series, blending hack and slash combat with infiltration mechanics very similar to the beloved Devil May Cry. Set beyond the events of MGS4, the game explores a world of ever-advancing technology following the Patriot's fall. And as for unused enemies, the models can be found in the in-game files with extremely low quality textures. Higher quality versions exist in the MGR demo, though the albedo texture is orange. These textures identify the enemies as belonging to the PMC called Sentinel. In concept art, these soldiers were stated to be the main ground enemies for the Miami sections of Metal Gear Solid Rising, and presumably retained as far as E3 2012 has holdovers from that era. They somewhat resemble the frogs combined with Killzone's Hellgas soldiers. Raiden also had unused animations, throwing a knife and throwing a grenade with his right hand. In the final game, Raiden just throws grenades left-handed. In terms of regional and platform differences, cyborg-based characters bleed white in the Japanese release, consistent with Metal Gear Solid 4's setting where Raiden also uses white blood. This significantly affects Jetstream Sam's death scene, where he notably bleeds red compared to everyone else's white blood, revealing him to be almost purely human. In the English version, everyone's blood is red, though an explanation of sorts is provided via codec, with extra clarification is added to Sam's death scene due to this change.
Organic muscle fiber which allows extraction of nutrients from the bloodstream does exist, but it requires artificial blood for sufficient power output. This so-called white blood requires regular dialysis and was mostly phased out once cyborg technology became mainstream.
The Japanese release of the VR Missions DLC includes a weapon called the Hebidimashi, literally meaning Snake's Spirit, a talking sword with Solid Snake's voice that encourages Raiden during combat. The sword was not included in international releases, presumably due to Kojima's decision to replace David Hayter with Kiefer Sutherland as the English voice of Snake, since Metal Gear Solid 5 was in development at the time. This likely would have rendered an English voice version of the sword unfeasible. The game was only made available for PlayStation 3 in Japan, and the Xbox 360 version was announced but never released due to the console's poor sales in the Japanese market. The Windows version is region locked on Steam and was never made available for purchase in Japan. The Steam version comes with all DLCs preload and adds the option to view all of the game's cutscenes and codec conversations outside the main game, as well as replay boss battles independently. Well, that's everything I could gather about the regional differences, cut content, and censorship across the Metal Gear series. If there's anything I've missed, please leave a comment down below. We've covered a lot of ground today, and from the early MSX and NES days all the way to Metal Gear 5, exploring really how these games changed as they crossed borders and evolved through different releases. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Metal Gear history, please give the video a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you love anything Metal Gear related. I hope you all have a happy Christmas and a fantastic start to the new year, and you guys know the drill. Until we meet again, take care out there.